So let's talk about God. What if God isn't some old man in the sky, but is actually the consciousness that's in and behind everything? And what if our own minds, your mind and my mind, are just little reflections of that one single universal mind? Well, that's the core idea from biologist Rupert Sheldrake that we're going to dive into today.
And this ancient Hindu metaphor, it is the perfect key to unlock this whole concept. Imagine looking out and seeing hundreds of separate moons, one in each bucket of water. But you just know, there's only one real moon up in the sky. I want you to hold this image in your head because it is central to everything we're about to explore. So here it is, the main idea in the nutshell. That moon in the sky, that's the one, universal consciousness. And our individual minds? Well, we're the buckets of water. Each one of us is just reflecting that exact same source. So even though we feel like these separate, isolated people, Sheldrake's thesis suggests we're really all just different reflections of the very same light.
Okay, but if this idea of a unified consciousness is so ancient and, kind of intuitive, why does it feel so foreign to so many of us today? That's a great question. And to answer it, we actually have to take a trip back in time to a huge turning point in how we in the West see the world. This timeline really shows you the dramatic shift. Back before the 17th century, the dominant view was something called Christian animism. Nature was seen as alive, it had a soul. But then, the scientific revolution happened, creating what Sheldrake calls the Great Split. All of a sudden, nature wasn't alive anymore. It was a dead machine. And God got kicked out, pushed out there, into this separate category called the supernatural.
And I mean, look at this contrast, it couldn't be more stark. On the one hand, you have a living world where even the word animal comes from anima, the Latin word for soul. The sacred is everywhere. And on the other hand, nature is just a machine, and spirit is something totally separate, totally outside of it. Now, this isn't just some abstract philosophical point. This split fundamentally changed how we relate to the planet and really to ourselves.
But here's the thing. Sheldrake argues that this connection isn't just about old ideas or things you have to believe in. No, this connection to a greater consciousness is something people have always known through direct personal experience. It's not something you believe, it's something you can actually encounter. For centuries, these kinds of mystical experiences were thought to be incredibly rare, something just for saints or prophets. But in the 1970s, this Oxford biologist, Sir Alister Hardy, he tried something different. He decided to just ask regular people about their experiences. He thought he'd get a few stories, maybe a handful. Instead, he was absolutely flooded with thousands of them. And this quote right here, it gets to the very heart of the issue. So many people who wrote to him said this exact same thing. They'd had these profound, life-altering moments of connection, but they kept them secret for years, terrified of being labeled crazy. So Hardy's research didn't just collect anecdotes, it uncovered this huge, hidden landscape of human spiritual experience that our modern worldview had basically told us to ignore.
Near-death experiences are another really powerful window into this. You see this pattern across so many cultures, it's remarkably consistent. Floating out of your body, going through a tunnel toward this brilliant light, feeling this incredible sense of peace and love. But the most crucial part is what happens after. People don't just come back with a cool story. They come back completely transformed, often with zero fear of death. For them, it's not a belief anymore. It's knowledge. They know consciousness is more than just the brain.
So if these experiences are really out there, are they just random, like a lightning strike? Or are there ways we can actually cultivate them? Well, according to countless traditions, the answer is a resounding yes. There are very specific practices designed to help us tap into this greater consciousness. Let's just take meditation. Today, we usually hear about it in a very secular way, right? It's a tool for your brain, a way to lower stress, and get more focused. And hey, it totally works for that. But that's only half the story. The traditional view in pretty much every major spiritual path wasn't just about feeling a little calmer. The whole point was to quiet your own mind so you could experience the ground of consciousness itself, which they saw as the consciousness of the entire universe.
Okay, I know this sounds like the beginning of a weird joke, but it actually points to a much, much broader way of thinking about what a spiritual practice can even be, and I think you might be surprised by the answer.
The answer? Complete, total presence. Just think about it for a second. A rock climber clinging to the side of a cliff. They can't be worrying about their emails. A downhill skier flying down a mountain has absolutely no mental space for anything but the slope in front of them. Sheldrake's amazing insight here is that these intense, high-stakes activities are basically a modern, secular form of spiritual practice. They force you into the now with such intensity that your chattering mind just goes silent, which is the exact same state a monk might spend decades trying to achieve on a cushion. So, let's bring this all back home. Let's revisit that beautiful image that we started with, that one moon and all those buckets of water. How does all this fit together? And here's where it all clicks. Our minds are almost always rippling, right? Rippling with anxieties, with plans, with that endless inner monologue. And all those ripples distort the reflection of the moon. So the whole goal of a spiritual practice, whether it's sitting in silence or skiing down a mountain, is to just still the water in our own little bucket. Because it's only when the water is calm that the reflection becomes clear. Only then can we truly see that one moon that's shining in all of us.
And that leaves us with a final thought to mull over. If all of consciousness is really one giant ocean, then our individual lives can feel like separate waves, right? They rise up, they have a form, and then they crash. But a wave is never actually separate from the ocean, is it? It's just a temporary shape that the water takes. So the question to leave you with is this. How much of you is the unique, temporary wave? And how much of you is the timeless water underneath it all?